Welcome to a special edition of the Darden Admissions Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, we continue our spotlight on our ongoing office hours series with a conversation with Chris Hertfer and Mark Ruggiano. This conversation is all about the healthcare initiative here at the Darden School of Business. So if you're interested in opportunities for students who have an interest in healthcare, this episode is essential listening. As always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Chris Hertfer and Mark Ruggiano. Mark, Christoph, thank you so much for being here. Let's start just with some introductions to get to know you a little bit better before we dive into the real meat of the conversation in healthcare here at Darden. So, Mark, can I come to you first? Tell us a little bit more about you and your background.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brett, and thanks to everybody who has joined us today. It's a pleasure to meet you all across the miles, and look forward to a great conversation about healthcare at Darden. As Brett said, I'm Mark Ruggiano. I have been at Darden for about 6 years now. At Darden, I do a couple of things. I am co-lead for Darden's healthcare initiative along with Christoph, and we'll tell you more about that. At least Brett has asked us to over the next hour. I also teach several courses in our MBA program in marketing and in healthcare. And outside of Darden, I teach at the UVA School of Data Science, and I am also one of the leaders of the La Crosse Institute for Ethical AI. So my background before coming to UVA is in the corporate world. I spent about 3 decades working in corporate businesses, some of them in healthcare and others in some related fields. And I'm a Darden graduate. I graduated from the MBA program in the mid '90s, and that was the beginning of my career in business. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Christoph, tell us a little bit more about you.
So my name is Chris. I'm originally from Germany and got my education all over Europe, in London and in Switzerland. I come from a slightly more techie background. I did my PhD in financial engineering at École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, and then taught for a few years at Emory University down in Atlanta. So whoever was in the chat from Atlanta, I was there for a while. And then my future colleagues at Darden decided that it was time for me to move up here, and they made a spectacular pitch about how special the school is and how amazing it is to be here, and they were not lying. So I've become a big believer, although I've only been here for a year. I have a wonderful time at Darden. Originally, I was not working on healthcare-related stuff, and unlike Mark, I don't have practical experience with it, but I just became sort of obsessed with healthcare when I moved to the United States with the complexity of it all. As somebody who enjoys puzzles and complexity, there are few puzzles bigger than the US healthcare sector. So I started to pivot hard in all my research and my teaching into the healthcare space. I'm consulting with private companies on healthcare and big data oriented stuff. And I developed a brand new elective on healthcare finance at Darden that might be of interest to you guys if we ever have time to talk about that later.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris. Mark, I want to come back to you. So you mentioned you're a Darden alum, and you've now returned to Darden. What brought you back to Darden in your current role?
Sure. Darden has been one of the most formative experiences on not just in my professional life, but in my life overall. And the opportunity to be a Darden student and be a Darden graduate, impacted everything else that I did after that. And so one of the things that brought me back to Darden was a desire to contribute to moving Darden forward and, building on the amazing foundation that is Darden today by helping it advance in different ways and grow in different ways. Another thing that brought me back to Darden was a love of Darden students. I like being in the classroom. I like helping people discover what they're passionate about and how they want to take the next step in their career journey. And so having the opportunity to do that every day, or at least many days of the week, is a great attraction to me. So those are some of the things that brought me back to Darden, Brett.
Yeah, I have to think if you love being in the classroom, Darden is a wonderful place to be as a faculty member. Darden's really built its reputation up around the educational experience here. Chris, you mentioned you're at another business school. You're now at Darden, and folks gave you this real pitch as to why this would be a great place for you to be. What was exciting to you about being at Darden as a faculty member?
Yeah, it's very interesting. So I think that Darden has a little bit of a special sauce in terms of both the students and the faculty. And it's kind of hard to describe that. It's a certain personality that drives here. And when we see faculty that we think is a good fit, we relentlessly hunt these people down, right? So my now colleagues started seeing me on the research circuit about half a decade ago, and immediately started telling me that the right place for me would be up here. And I didn't really get that until I was here. And they were absolutely right. It's very hard to put the finger on exactly what it is. It has to do with being somebody who enjoys the classroom, but like not just the classroom in the sense that the professor speaks to you and delivers you a lecture. It's a very active experience, right? So we try to get 2/3 to 80% of our students involved every single time we teach. And just the quality of the product that we deliver to our students is just superb. I think that it does not have a comparison it needs to be afraid of. And we spend so much energy on creating the best possible student experience. I know we're supposed to talk about healthcare here today, but I just come out of a grueling week of teaching 6 times in the core. So if you guys end up coming to Darden, there's about a 50-50 chance that you have to suffer through some of the most dreaded classes here in the core with me. And just the effort that goes into creating this very unique experience is tremendous, and it shows, and it's intoxicating. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's on both ends, right? The amount of preparation a faculty member has to do to lead a discussion, that's facilitated through the Socratic method, asking these questions, trying to draw out the conversation, but also students to be ready for the conversation, to show up with a perspective. What do you think should be done in this particular case, and why, and to be prepared for that conversation. It takes a lot of work, but I think it makes it more rewarding for that. So let's talk about the healthcare initiative. We've sort of set things up here. So let's talk about the healthcare initiative. Mark, tell us a little bit more about what this is all about here at Darden.
Yeah, sure. And I know that Christoph will also add as we go along. But the Darden Healthcare Initiative is about a year old. It was created to help pull together the many wonderful ingredients that already exist here at Darden related to healthcare, and a number of them have existed for a while. And the Darden Healthcare Initiative started to bring those ingredients together and make them easier for students, to take advantage of, to make them easier for prospective students like yourselves to understand and to factor into your decision making about what you do with your life in this next step. And then also to provide some strategic guidance, which Christoph and I do on behalf of the whole Darden enterprise, all of the parts of Darden, on how we should be thinking about taking healthcare forward here at Darden from a student perspective, from a research perspective, and from a community and alumni engagement perspective. And I know Chris has some things that he likes to highlight in those areas as well. So, Chris, what do you think?
So I think that what happened was that there was a lot of serendipity in the timing of both me and Mark arriving here, because this was a bit of an accident. When they hired Mark, they wanted his expertise in the AI space and in the big data space and data science space. And in my case, they thought they hired somebody who's doing sort of work on big data and banking related topics. And it turned out that both of us have this big passion for healthcare. That wasn't the primary reason why Darden wanted us, but then it was a story of the right place at the right time, where the school decided that it was time to take all of the amazing resources that we have and bundle them. So our job is not so much about creating new stuff. Our job, as we figured out over the last 12 months, was that there's already so much stuff going on, but it's kind of disjoint. So it's like this faculty member who's in the operations department who we learned, oh, this person has a lot of research on healthcare operations. This other person that works with a company on consulting that's very healthcare related. These students who run all these different student-run initiatives and exercises. And so a lot of what we do is not so much about creating new stuff. We are just always amazed by how much is already here. And we really try to just put people into a room and get them to work together more than build anything from the ground up.
Both of you, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's important. Some of the, several of those things. Darden is a school that believes in and is organized to help you become general managers, and that means a great deal, to us here at Darden, to the school overall, to the individual faculty members like Christoph and I. A general manager understands business from all perspectives, from the perspective of finance and marketing and operations, from the customer's perspective and from other stakeholders' perspective, et cetera. And healthcare, what better sector of the economy, certainly here in the US and across the world, to bring that type of thinking to the table, right? Darden graduates can bring that perspective to healthcare. And in healthcare, it's necessary to solve our problems and improve the system and make people healthier. And so Darden's natural foundation of general management is the foundation that's going to propel us forward as a healthcare system. And the healthcare initiative at Darden is starting by bringing together some of the great pieces, as Christoph said, that already exist.
Yeah, and I'm going to give it back to Brad in a second, but there are certain points that I'm like very fond of stressing. And so Mark just stressed the synergy between general management and healthcare in one direction, where he said, hey, if you want to do great work in healthcare, you've got to be a great general manager. But what I'm always amazed by is that the arrow goes the other way as well. The fact that if you want to be a general manager, you still have to understand healthcare, because there's this quote that I'm always very fond of saying, where the CEO of General Motors at some point said that if you buy a car from General Motors, you're paying $2,000 for the steel and you're paying $2,500 for the healthcare. So it doesn't matter whether you want to be a healthcare specialist or not. Everybody needs to have an understanding of this massive part of our economy and the cost structure of companies, even if they're not prima facie healthcare firms. And we're trying to sort of push this narrative and embody this in what we do with the healthcare initiative.
The question that we got here in the Q&A is obviously some of the conversation is obviously related to the U.S. healthcare system, but to what extent does healthcare outside of the United States come into some of the work that you're doing around the healthcare initiative, in the cases that you see, the research that people are doing? Is that also part of the initiative here?
Yeah, I think the short answer, Brett, is yes, it definitely is. The sort of distribution of the emphasis from a global perspective in healthcare, mirrors the distribution of Darden students' interest, and so there's a component of what we do in healthcare that is absolutely relevant to large healthcare sectors in other countries. On the flip side, much of where we've started is U.S. based, and that is because many Darden students, at least, when they graduate, directly after they graduate, are pursuing jobs in the United States. And so, to help equip them and prepare them for jobs that make up 20% of our economy, we have started with an emphasis on healthcare in the United States, but we cover many regions, and more broadly than that, Darden's focus is absolutely global. And I'm sure that you all are familiar or will have an opportunity to learn more about our Darden Worldwide courses and other global immersion experiences that all Darden students have access to. So global is essential, an essential part of the Darden experience. And in healthcare, it's present. And our foundation of understanding and insights about general management, do begin in the U.S.
Let me link in here because I think there's a very deep sort of philosophical point in what Mark just said about how Darden approaches problems. When you become a specialist, you zoom into one role, one market, one location, and you become an expert in all the little minute details that make this job challenging, and that's very valuable. But this is not the Darden way. What we try to do is we try to teach you the big overarching themes, the economic forces, the forces that drive markets in general. That's this general management attitude that Darden embodies so strongly. And why do we stress that? We stress it because your job is going to be extremely different whether you practice in the US or in Europe or in other parts of the world. And you can only be a specialist in one of these markets, in one of these industries, in one of these locations. By equipping you with these broad themes, these big forces that you understand, you are able to apply your knowledge across borders. Our thought process is that if you're smart enough to get into Darden, you're smart enough to learn about the nitty-gritty in market X versus market Y. What we want to equip you with is a toolbox, a way of thinking about problems that's universally applicable across industries, sectors, and countries. In healthcare, this specialization is deeper than in most other sectors, and yet we strive to provide you with this toolbox that you can take and apply no matter where you go, conditional on you then being willing to learn the nitty-gritty of each individual market.
Yeah, thank you both for your insights there. One of the things that's also unique about working on a healthcare initiative at Darden is that you also have UVA Health, a major healthcare system in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right at your doorstep, so to speak. How have you been able to connect with UVA Health, leverage relationships, opportunities with that healthcare system for students who are interested in healthcare?
Sure. Well, Christoph and I have worked hand in hand to do a lot of that. The University of Virginia has many different opportunities and many different outstanding programs and people and research labs and other things that make up our ecosystem here. And UVA Health is at the top of that list, the crown jewel in that ecosystem. Chris and I took a group of students from our respective courses over to UVA Health 2 years ago, and the students had a phenomenal time. They got to hear from 3 members of the executive team, the chief administrative officer, the chief marketing and communications officer, and the chief operating officer, who helped them understand the way a large health system, an academic health system here in the United States works, and connect some of the dots, as Christoph said a few minutes ago, to some of the overarching themes that are applicable across businesses. The students also got to, get in full surgical gear and go in the OR and observe actual live procedures of several different kinds. So they got to see the nitty-gritty, again, as Christoph pointed out a few minutes ago. They got to see the nitty-gritty of medicine being practiced. And so that type of collaboration is the type of experience that you can expect, here at UVA or here at Darden. And we are doing more and more with other parts of UVA, both through the Darden Healthcare Initiative and in other ways as well.
And as I said a little bit earlier, a lot of what's been going on for Mark and me in spearheading this initiative is that we just found all these little gems that are already lying around. And one of the coolest things we found was that there's this collaboration between the business school and the medical school, where a bunch of medical students come to Darden to get like a little bit of a business education, specifically in finance. And so all these things, they're out there and they're driven by this one faculty member who's really passionate about it. And part of our job is to kind of bundle all of these efforts to make them mutually reinforcing. And just like we're constantly surprised to find out just how much supply there is in terms of healthcare related topics. There's also surprisingly much demand for it. You can tell I'm an economist. I like to talk about supply and demand, right? So we are just overwhelmed by how much interest our students have in this topic, because so many of them go into healthcare afterwards, many more than you see in the official statistics. So what we realized was that there are all these students, these amazing students who go into consulting or finance, right? But when you talk to them, what kind of consulting? They say, well, I go to this specialized healthcare consulting firm. Some of them go into finance, but when you talk to them, they say, well, I will focus purely on PE in the healthcare space, or I'm going to be a VC in the pharmaceutical space. And so we are constantly surprised both on the supply side and the demand side of just how much healthcare there already is at Darden.
UVA has a presence in all of those areas, right? The Manning Institute for Biotechnology is a new addition to the ecosystem. Chris mentioned biotech, and many of our students, like perhaps many of you are interested in the biotech sector and getting into it. Well, the Manning Institute here at UVA is a leading research organization that's pushing that forward. And there are a number of other examples across the ecosystem that make this really, really fertile ground for students like yourselves and faculty like us who are interested in the healthcare sector.
You can tell that Mark and me are burning for this, because poor Brett had handed it off to us for like a short answer, and then we've been going for 15 minutes. Sorry about that, but we just love what we do here.
I'll take enthusiasm any day of the week. So I want to put a pin in the conversation here for a minute, and we're going to come back to talk about some of the things that are happening related to the healthcare initiative at Darden. As part of Office Hours series, we try to also give faculty a chance to talk about some of the contemporary issues around their particular interest. And so since the conversation here is about healthcare, I wanted to give you both an opportunity to offer some perspective on the healthcare conversation generally here in the United States. A lot of talk about healthcare. General sense is that we pay a lot for it. It's a sixth of the GDP. People don't have as much access as they should. Outcomes are not what they should be. A lot of people basically say the system is broken. What's your reaction to this particular line of commentary, Mark? What do you think about this conversation?
Yeah, you bring up some of the reasons why healthcare is such an amazing, sector to work in, to study. It's a great place to be early in your career, because it's one of the most challenging sectors to be in because of some of the things that Brett just mentioned. My take on healthcare in the United States in particular is that we have an opportunity to do a whole lot better than we are doing today. And it takes leaders like Darden graduates become in order for us to be able to do that. Healthcare, we spend a lot, as Brett said. Our outcomes are mediocre, in the 20s or 30s in terms of life expectancy, certainly among OECD countries, below average. But that isn't just because people can't get access to care. It isn't just because healthcare is a commercial enterprise in the United States. It's also because the behaviors, certainly of the U.S. population, don't always support good health and long, healthy lives. And so we call many of the other factors outside of medical care social determinants. And, social determinants are a really rich topic, and a place where understanding behavior and creating programs and other interventions can have a dramatic impact and improve healthcare. So my short take is, yes, we spend a lot. We have some of the greatest technology. We have some of the most highly trained scientists and medical professionals, and we can get more out of it. And we need people like you, the Darden Healthcare Initiative and the Darden School, to make that happen.
that's a really cool point that Mark made just now, and I would kind of like link in there. This is a good example of sort of the nuance we try to bring to the classroom, right? It's very easy for people to look at the raw numbers and say, well, clearly this thing is completely broken because the outcomes look so bad. But when you look underneath the hood, you realize that there's a lot going on here, right? So, for example, life expectancy in the US is very low, partly because we lose so many young people to car accidents and to gunshots. Why do we do that? Because the United States has a lot more firearms per person, and the United States people drive a lot more with their cars because distances are a lot further than other countries. Now, does it have anything to do with the healthcare system? Probably not, right? And then the biggest determinant of output in any system is input quality, right? And so for health, the biggest determinant of health outcomes might be the health inputs. If you look at, for example, obesity rates, the US healthcare system just has to work with an input in terms of the baseline health of the population. That's very challenging. And so it's very easy to be down on the system before you understand these nuances. And this is a good example of what we try to do in our courses. We try to challenge you. We try to challenge the common wisdom. And since I saw a question about private equity in the chat a while ago, so one of the most contentious issues right now in healthcare is that in the United States, because there's a business aspect to it, it is one of the fastest growing areas of private equity. Which is one of the reasons why I'm pitching my healthcare finance course, because I'm saying that if you want to go into private equity, the biggest industry is most likely going to be healthcare. And there's a big battle going on between people who argue that the private equity firms make an inefficient system more efficient, and so they are able to generate both profits for themselves and better health outcomes for the patients. And other people who argue the opposite. And so in my healthcare finance course, we spend a lot of time talking about these things and the nuances around them, whether all types of private equity are the same, and whether ultimately this is creating both shareholder value and patient value or not. My punchline for my students is always that I think that healthcare is this one area of the economy where you can do incredibly well for yourself while doing good for society, more so than in most other industries. And that makes it super exciting.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. I want to also question here also from the Q&A, sort of something that we also talked about in the preparation is about AI in healthcare. Mark, this is very much something that's core to your interest. What are some of the implications of the use of AI in healthcare? Maybe the potential, but also the potential downsides for it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a topic that's in many of the headlines. Whether you want to read about AI in healthcare or not, if you're reading the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times or any of those publications, you're likely to come across AI articles talking about healthcare or healthcare articles talking about AI. And right now we see a bunch of both opportunity and challenge, as Brett said. Areas where there's a lot of activity going on are things like ambient listening, which is an AI related technology that certain practices and hospitals and health systems are using during a patient encounter. So in the room with the doctor and the patient, or the nurse and the patient, to help take notes and document the things that need to be documented in the patient's record, and do it more efficiently than having the physician or the nurse or a specialized note taker type those things in. And so automating that through AI is one of the very active areas right now. A second is in diagnostics, and in particular in radiology, the use of AI to process images. They might be X-rays or MRIs or CAT or PET scans, right, to help identify where a human being, a radiologist, a physician, an expert, should focus their time and attention. Or in some cases, and this is where I think there's even more opportunity, when we take an image for a particular purpose, let's say a sprained wrist, or to see if there's something in the abdomen, a growth or something like that shouldn't be there. That image captures a lot of additional information, right? Not just the wrist, but the hand and the arm, not just one portion of the abdomen, but typically the whole thing. And so if a human radiologist is looking for one thing, because that's what the doctor ordered, so to speak, AI can help by looking for everything else. And it's amazing what we can do with information that for 100 years has just been discarded. And so that's another very hot area where AI is active. In both cases, AI can't and shouldn't replace human beings, shouldn't replace the judgment or the training of a healthcare professional. And so that's one of the tensions right now is how do we do that? How do we do that and make sure that outcomes and recommendations are correct and safe, and that patient treatment is always and patient safety are always at the top of our mind.
Christoph, what's your reaction to this AI and healthcare conversation?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the absolute hottest trends out there, right? Like if you think about the venture capital space right now, the PE space right now, this is an unbelievable opportunity. It's definitely a bit of a gold rush mentality right now. But it's just very tricky because we have a very tight regulatory regime. Because as Mark said, there's a lot of risks around that as well. And I think I saw someone in the Q&A mentioning the importance of ethical AI, right? Like there's AI and then there's ethical AI. And I think this is another reason why healthcare at Darden is doing so well right now is that we're in a unique position where Darden has been a leader on the ethics of doing business for a long time. Some of our colleagues are international legends on the field of business ethics. So we have this backbone, this existing thought process that goes through Darden's way of thinking about business that is heavily focused on doing ethical business. And combining that with the new expertise we're gaining on the AI and data science side puts us in a unique place to think about those things. Personally, I'm actually working on some stuff with private companies. So one big deal for Darden professors is that we're encouraged to work with practitioners. We're not supposed to sit in the ivory tower. We're supposed to be out there and learn how business is being done. And so I'm consulting with a specialized firm where I'm using big data methods to detect fraud in government programs in healthcare. And this is a huge application for AI in the real world. That's a perfect example for something that can make you better off as a person while doing something good for society.
Mark, what are some of the risks around AI, things that sort of give you pause when you think about this conversation?
Sure. In healthcare in particular, Brett, there are a lot of risks. And I think this, something similar could be said about many sectors, but healthcare, deals with our life, our longevity, the quality of that life. And so many of the places where AI is used have greater consequences than, seeing the wrong ad on a website, for example, which is another use of AI and another place where mistakes happen. But in healthcare, those mistakes can lead to injury, they can lead to deaths. And so the consequences, the stakes are higher. That's one, important consideration. And because of that, we need to be especially thoughtful and careful and have a higher threshold of certainty than we do in some other circumstances. And so, we have the risk of AI-driven recommendations being wrong. And that could be because the AI was developed improperly or incorrectly, I should say. It could be because the data that was used to do that development, to train that model, had various problems. It was biased. It contained, inaccurate information. It wasn't representative of the types of cases or other situations that it's being used for in all instances. And it can also be problematic. Other ethical considerations come into it. When you think about how AI is used on patients who may or may not have been a part of the training data. So when we get a sample of patients and collect their data, to train AI, we need to be very careful and very thoughtful that represents the type of patients that we're going to see when we use the AI. So those are some of the issues. But overall, Brett, I think that AI is a very promising group of technologies, group of techniques, and there's a lot of promise in helping to do something about some of the challenges in healthcare that we talked about early on.
One of the conversations that's been in the news here in the United States relates to drugs and the cost of drugs, which gets into all kinds of things, intellectual property, patents, trademarks, generics versus, drugs that are not yet generic. Christoph, what's your reaction to this? Because this is a very hot topic because, if you look at sort of like GLP-1 drugs in the United States, this has been sort of very much people have been up on Congress about this. There's been conversations about insulin and diabetes treatments as well. What's your reaction to this sort of drug conversation?
Yeah. I said earlier that like something that attracts me to the healthcare space is the enormous complexity. I'm somebody who likes puzzles, and I think pharma is a massive puzzle, right? So there's so much going on here. On the institutional level, right? There are certain ways in which we distribute drugs. In particular, in the United States, we have these middlemen that we call PBMs that are $100 billion+ companies. There's 4 of them, right? And somehow nobody fully understands why they're there. And one thing I did in my healthcare finance course was I brought an executive from one of those 4, the CEO of one of those 4 companies came to my class and explained to us what is it that they actually do and why are they valued at these enormous figures. There are all these government programs that lead to cross-subsidizations of drugs between different players. There's a $60 billion program in the United States that allows hospitals to buy drugs at a discount from the pharma industry, not because the pharma industry wants to do that, but because the government kind of forces the pharma companies to provide this cross-subsidization. There's the whole biotech arena where we have these very innovative firms creating new compounds and developing new drugs that can treat diseases that we haven't seen before. There's gene editing now. I wrote a case on CRISPR, and the very first drug that was developed to target specific genetic defects that cause diseases. And then we go into the ethical side of things and we say, okay, so it takes us a few $1 billion to develop a new drug that can save lives. What is a fair price for this? I didn't do a great job answering your question because it was very open-ended. So I think I asked more questions than I answered right now. But this is the exciting stuff that's happening in healthcare, and this is what we try to address in our courses.
No, all these answers are great, and I want to give you a chance to talk about the things that are most exciting to you. So that's the open-ended question. So Mark, I'm also just continue sort of this hot topics before we get back to sort of what's happening here at Darden. Maybe 1 or 2 more questions here. We've gotten some really great questions in the Q&A, but one of the other trends here in the United States is around consolidation, right? You see insurance companies acquiring healthcare providers and hospital systems and these kinds of things. What do you make of this trend? You see this as like a broader macro trend? Is it sort of more isolated? Are there concerns? Are there opportunities here?
I'll mention one aspect of it, and then I know Christoph has thoughts on consolidation as well. One of the trends that I experienced in my career in the corporate world in healthcare has continued and maybe even accelerated. And in addition to financial and market-driven reasons, for consolidation, one of the primary reasons that I see, and it's a positive one, is because information is one of the most important resources in healthcare, and consolidation has been driven in part by a desire for on the part of the consolidating company to have a full picture of how their business is operating, how their patients and clients, members, et cetera, right? They're called different things by different types of companies, right? How they are experiencing health, how they are using the healthcare system. And what's funny is the US government also wants to have a full picture. And so while in many cases, consolidation can be thought of as anti-competitive, the U.S. government and these large consolidated companies actually have strong aligned incentives because the information is available and integrated, and there's an opportunity if we can take advantage of it, to improve the business and to improve the care that we deliver.
There's so much here when we talk about scale. The first thing that comes to my mind is that there's a massive consolidation wave underway in healthcare, and healthcare M&A has been the largest M&A area in the United States for a few years running. So that goes back to my point that even if you don't want to specialize in healthcare, it is just so huge that it's very hard to avoid having to deal with it. And part of what we try to do is equip general managers with this knowledge. Now, where's the scale coming from? You can think of scale as size and scale as scope. And we see that there's an increase in scale on both of these dimensions, meaning that we see a horizontal consolidation where the people at the same spot of the value chain, for example, hospitals, start to merge into these bigger and bigger hospital systems. So that is on the horizontal axis. But you also see a vertical integration where firms grow along the value chain, where they buy up physician general practitioners that then lead their patients and refer their patients into the further upstream specialized healthcare providers. And so scale is increasing in the United States on both of those dimensions. And this is where it gets really complicated, because part of this is us changing our attitude towards healthcare. Like many other countries in the US, we had this attitude that we wanted healthcare to be almost like a cottage industry. We wanted providers to be very small. We wanted to have this separation between different functions along the value chain. But with a change in technology, the benefits of consolidation have increased so much, just as Mark just described, that we've changed our thinking and we now encourage this consolidation. And that's a mega trend that is shaping the industry right now. Just looping back for a second, like 30 minutes ago, right, we talked about the spirit in which we try to teach our students. And we try to teach our students about these big picture ideas and concepts that are not necessarily unique to an individual market. This is exactly the kind of thinking that I meant then. It doesn't matter whether you want to work in healthcare in South America or in India or in Italy or in the United States. This mega trend that technology is changing the optimal scale and scope of healthcare firms, that's the same everywhere. And so we don't teach you about the laws in America that keep these companies small. We teach you about the economic forces that drive the consolidation so you can apply these ideas in other markets.
All right. Well, thank you both. We got about 15 minutes here, and I want to give some airtime for the things that are happening here at Darden around healthcare on the course front, what faculty are doing, maybe some of the practitioners and alumni who come back to engage with students. So let's talk about courses first. Mark, tell us more about some of the healthcare related courses that are available to Darden students.
Yeah, sure. The courses that Darden students can take today are that are focused on healthcare are healthcare electives in finance, which Christoph created and teaches, healthcare marketing, which I created and teach, a course on healthcare challenges, which is taught by Dr. Paul Mathern, and another course that Paul teaches on healthcare strategy. Those electives are in a sequence that allows Darden students to take one elective that is healthcare focused each quarter in their second year. And so students who really want to immerse themselves in the healthcare focused courses that Darden offers can take a course a quarter, for their entire second year. In addition to those courses, we have independent studies, which are, very personal projects almost, where one or a couple of students work with a member of the Darden faculty for a quarter or for 2 quarters or for several quarters. And they are a great opportunity to get to know a professor that you really enjoy and can learn from, and to work on a healthcare topic that's of great interest to you. Those are all choices that our students can make if they want to dig deeper in healthcare. In addition to those, we have probably a dozen other courses that have significant healthcare content. We don't call them healthcare focused because they're not exclusively healthcare, but they cut across all of the areas that we've mentioned here today: finance, operations, marketing, data analytics, et cetera. And in those courses, you will learn a tremendous amount about healthcare, in addition to cases and examples and projects from other industries as well. So there's a wealth of different ways in the classroom that Darden students can learn about healthcare.
Chris, I want to come to you with a question that we get from prospective students often. People will look at our offerings on the website and say, well, why doesn't Darden have a concentration in healthcare? Obviously, we talked about these courses, et cetera. But what's your reaction to that question? What would you say to the prospective student who asked that?
Yeah. So I said earlier that Darden is a little bit special, and part of that specialness is this relentless focus on general management. And as part of that, the hurdle to call something a specialization is enormously high. Now, different business schools have different models, and some have a lower hurdle, and they're more willing to give this concentration. But we very conscientiously try to avoid too much specialization. We try to train general managers with business skills that are transferable across areas. Now, Mark called the sequence of healthcare electives a healthcare track, right? So you can build your own specialization if you want to. You can take one elective after another, and at the end of your journey at Darden, you will have accumulated 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 courses that are very healthcare centric. Does this have a label on it saying that you're now a track person? Probably not. But you've built yourself this curriculum for yourself that effectively fulfills the same role.
And one of the other things that I hear from our current students as well is that healthcare cases show up in all of the classes, not just limited to a course about healthcare. There seemingly it might be an econ class or a finance class or a marketing class. To your point, Mark, there's healthcare sort of all over the Darden curriculum.
Yeah, there's healthcare all over in terms of the emphasis of the courses. As Christoph said, there are many healthcare centric courses, whether they are healthcare focused or whether they are broader in nature. We also have more than 300 publications, meaning cases, teaching materials, and other things that our students and our faculty use in class and in projects and other things. And so the publishing side of what Darden does, which is very unique and is there to support the unique way that Darden teaches and the unique emphasis that we've talked about earlier. We have a number of different resources, and including that Darden Business Publishing Library that I mentioned, which again spans finance, ops, technology, data analytics, et cetera.
So Chris, you mentioned about some consulting that you're doing. I do want to talk a little bit about what's happening around research and thought leadership here in the healthcare space at Darden. What would you want folks to know who've joined here about some of the research that faculty are doing?
So I'm still grinding through the tenure track and enjoying the relentless pressure of publish or perish, which means that I'm having a bit more of a research-centric perspective. But just like every other university, we are this like famous three-legged stool where you have teaching and the students, you have practitioner outreach, and you have sort of core academic research. And something that's special about Darden is just how serious we are about merging those three areas, meaning that I will bring a lot of practitioners to the classroom to teach the students how healthcare finance and healthcare management actually works in the real world. And these practitioners sometimes approach me and say, hey, we have this business problem. Can you help us with that? And then I bring my expertise to their business world. And on the other hand, in these conversations with the practitioners, they teach me about the key challenges that they face, which then inspires my research and can sometimes even feature the data that these healthcare providers give me. So what Darden does better than any other place that I've seen before is this flywheel, as people say, where teaching, research, and practitioner engagement is heavily encouraged and creates a synergistic effect between those different areas in which professors work. On the research side, again, we are a little bit different from other schools and a little special in that we look to do research that's highly practically relevant. It's very encouraged that we work on real world problems, not abstract theories. And so we think of our research more as think of it as thought leadership more than research. We want this research to be applicable in the real world. So I have this project going with the big data approach to fraud that is both practitioner outreach and is going to generate a hopefully blockbuster research paper. I wrote a research paper on the different behavior between for-profit hospitals and not-for-profit hospitals, which is a huge policy debate in the US and applies some really cool cutting-edge statistical techniques to answer this question. And my colleagues across the various departments produce exciting research and thought leadership on healthcare all the time. And part of what we do is we just try to pick up these little gems and make them more visible. So we're starting a research seminar series now, and we try to disseminate all this thought leadership that's being produced to the public in the future and just highlight all the great stuff that's already here.
I would just want to add real quickly one comment. Students can get involved in the activities that Christoph just mentioned. And, an example of that is from my own work. I had a Darden student who both while they were a student and after they graduated, helped do some research and write a case about launching a new medical device. And so, opportunities for students to work with faculty on academic research and in other ways are an important part of what we're doing in healthcare here at Darden.
Got a question in the Q&A about how students engage with actual practitioners. It's been mentioned a few times that folks come from industry to your classrooms, but Mark, what does this engagement look like? How do actual practititioners, how do they get to grounds and engage with students or engage virtually? What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. There are lots of examples of that. And when we say practitioner, right, what we mean is a business person, someone who is not here at Darden every day, not a professor, not a staff member, et cetera. So we have thousands. I think we have 3,000 Darden graduates, 3,000 alums who have recently worked in healthcare companies. And we bring them back as often as we can because they have phenomenal experience to share with students. They have led acquisitions of other companies, and they come and talk in Christoph's course. They have launched new healthcare products, new drugs, new medical devices, and so they come and talk in my healthcare marketing course. They share their experiences in class. They make themselves available to students who, are learning about and considering careers in healthcare M&A or in pharmaceutical marketing, the two examples that I mentioned, through coffee chats or through connecting one-on-one with students. And then they partner with faculty on new cases and research projects and other things. The Darden network of alumni is amazing. And in healthcare, they are very passionate and very interested in helping you succeed, should you choose Darden and pursue healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a phenomenal thing to watch, right? Like, remember, I've only been here for a year, and I've seen so many examples of how the practical world comes to the classroom and vice versa. A case that just happened to me half a year ago randomly was that I wanted to write about private equity in healthcare and how it can sometimes go wrong. And so I want to write this case, and then I mentioned it in passing to one of my students in the core Darden corporate finance class. He says, "You know what? I was actually on the private equity firm at the time when the whole thing collapsed." And so before I know it, that student and myself sit in a room with a bunch of specialized consultants from a bankruptcy restructuring consulting firm, and we go over the details of like thought process that they had as they were navigating this like $8 billion bankruptcy, which was one of the major sort of healthcare events in the United States in the last 5 years. And this sounds crazy, but this has happened repeatedly to me within a single year of being here. And it's just phenomenal how our students are engaged and how our alumni and the practitioners want to come and help out. And I think that is something so special about this place. It's incredible.
All right, got two more questions here. We just got a few more minutes. We always like to talk about cases and case discussions that you have in your class. Mark, is there a case that you've worked on recently, or just do you have a favorite case in sort of healthcare genre?
Well, that would be two answers. My current favorite case in healthcare is my favorite because it is an example of the kinds of work that I did when I was in the corporate setting, and it's a case about CVS Health and medication adherence. And it's a case that actually happened, and many of the characters in the case are real people who you could look up on LinkedIn, or who you may work with or have worked with in healthcare. I worked with several of them personally, and it's a great case that demonstrates how the healthcare system is interconnected, and the best outcomes and the best use of our money is when firms compete, but compete in a way that is very collaborative. A case that I wrote that I think is very promising is a case on arthroscopic spine surgery, and asking Darden students to think of, as marketers, how you would launch a new product in arthroscopic spine surgery. It's not as straightforward as you might think, and Darden students have really enjoyed it.
Chris, same question for you. Yeah, you have a favorite healthcare related case, or you have a favorite case that you've written that's in this healthcare genre?
Yeah. I mean, I had a banger of a case last year that I wrote. This is so cool. So we looked into the finances of radiation therapy, and we get the CEO of this big radiation therapy chain in the classroom. And his company had this super interesting situation where they need to build their own real estate in order to practice. Means that they have to dish out $6 to $8 million every time they want to open a new location, which means that they need tons of capital, which means that they are highly leveraged and they need a lot of cash flow to service their debt. Now, once this thing is built and they spend another $1 million on the radiation machine, on the margin per patient, they look unbelievably profitable. So every additional patient they can put through the machine looks extremely profitable, but they need that money in order to service the mountain of debt that they have, because they need all the specialized infrastructure. Now, all of a sudden, the regulator looks at these places and says, well, those guys look very, very profitable. We better cut the reimbursement. So from one day to the next, they take this huge hit where Medicare, the biggest payer, the government, slashes their reimbursement per patient by an enormous amount. The entire industry goes belly up, but our guy survives. And so the whole case centers around this unique situation that's only existing in healthcare and how he got out of it. And that is just such a cool case. And that's the kind of case I want to provide my students with.
That's very, very interesting. So thank you both for your energy, for your enthusiasm, great answers today. Last question. If someone's gotten interested in what we talked about here today, Mark, what's a good next step for our attendees in terms of learning about either healthcare at Darden? What would you recommend?
Sure. There are a couple of ways, couple of avenues that I would suggest. The first is Darden has a good deal of information available on our website. And so if you haven't taken the time to check that out, check out the Darden Healthcare Initiative pages on the website. That would be a good step. The second is Darden has a very active healthcare club. And I know that current Darden students are typically very happy to talk to students that are considering coming to Darden, especially those that are interested in healthcare. So that might be another good step. Chris, anything to add to that list?
No, I think our current students are phenomenal and they're eager to help and they are excited about all the good stuff that's happening around healthcare at Darden. They want more of you here. Our alumni want more of you here. They want to hire you. If you're interested, I think people here are incredibly helpful and it's a very supporting place.
Thank you both again. Mark, I was thinking about that statistic you threw out about alumni with healthcare related experience. 3,000, the number. Darden's alumni base is like 19,000 or so. So that's a pretty good chunk of the overall Darden alumni group out there. So thank you both for a fantastic conversation. As always, we were recording this conversation. The recording will be up on our Vimeo channel within the next couple days. If you want to go back and watch or catch up on any of the conversation you might have missed. I would also note that the audio version will be coming to our admissions podcast, Experience Darden, and the ExecMBA podcast. And be sure to come back in February. My boss, Donna Clark, will host an office hours conversation. But thank you both for your time. And to our attendees, thanks for taking some time out of maybe your afternoon, your evening, your morning, wherever you may be in the world to join us for this. Thank you all. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And that was my conversation with Chris Herpfer and Mark Ruggiano, two faculty members here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.